from high school. Here's still the small towns, all American just like you. Here's still my family, to the place I was born and raised. Well, living the good life, baby, is there any other way? Here it is now. Hey!
Welcome, everybody, back to an incredible episode of BeAlive, the podcast, as we continue on this journey of what is this thing going to be. It's exciting. I'm figuring out the format, and we're continuing to push forward on amazing guests, which leads me to my next guest for today, which is super exciting. I'm going to read you off some accolades before I introduce my guest, because it's very well-deserved and a long list, and this is fun. He's going to love this because I actually had to go print off 2 pieces of paper for this. So my next guest is a gentleman who comes from the film and production industry. He is a partner of mine, a business partner of mine, as well as the president of studios. He's someone that we convinced to move from Los Angeles to Michigan, and we'll get into that story in a little bit. But he's also been a part of this long list, including executive producer of Alone for 12 episodes, 25 episodes of Top Shot as the producer and supervising producer on that one, Out of the Wild, Venezuela, American Chopper, the series, The Alaska Experiment, Survivor, 57 episodes of Survivor, and there's some great stories we're going to get into there. And all of our Rivers Are Life films, The Alaska Experiment, many, many more. It's incredible that he's here. I just happened to be in here on business, and I was like, you got to sit down and we got to have ourselves a chat. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Mr. Zachary.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. What's going on?
It's always fun to walk down memory lane
right.
on the old project.
It's fun to talk about because it is such a long list of incredible stuff, and it's what, back in the day, it's what kind of brought us together.
Absolutely.
I think Alone and Dropped and kind of that whole scenario, even before BeAlive, there was like a connection between us at that point for that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, we started talking so long ago, and it's so fascinating because I think there's only so many people that go out and do the work that we do in the places that we do it, and so kind of kindred spirits in that way, right? You know right away, like, the hardships that you're willing to put up with to come back with the goods. Not everybody does that. And so Dropped, Alone, The Alaska Experiment, Out of the Wild, all those shows, we've spent years traveling the globe in harsh places. And just knowing that you love it, knowing that I love it, it's already like that connection for the effort is there.
Exactly. And you're doing so I just get to be the idiot and the guy that's out there that they're filming and hoping gets attacked by a bear, but you're running an entire crew, and you're like, when you're on things like that in the remote wilderness, there's a lot going on. And I don't know that people understand the back end of it a little bit on that side, but just before we get too deep into it, I'd love to hear just like that situation there and running something like that on say, let's Alone.
Sure.
That's a system in itself.
Yeah. So look, that show, one of the proudest, I'm most proud of that project, I would say, from my past history. It's going into its 12th season. I was the EP on 7 of the seasons. It's an amazing thing, and it runs like its own business, right? It has a multi-million-dollar budget, and as the EP, as the executive producer, it's my job to oversee all elements of the production, everything from the early stage development, to casting, to the budgeting, the safety, the creative, the cinematography, the production of it in the field, and the logistics that go into that, and then through the edit, and then the delivery to the network. So certainly not a one-man band, right?
It's a crew, right?
It's a crew. It's a massive team effort. And so you sort of, if you think about it in those terms, you got your coach and your players. There's experts in every one of those departments. There are HODs, heads of department, for each one of those, and then they have their own teams. And so you rely on your experts for each one of those, right? I know enough to be dangerous in each one of those. But not, but I know enough to know that I need
an expert,
smarter people around me, right, to execute. But you have to be able to tie all those things together and do it in a place, right? Mongolia, the Arctic, Argentina, Vancouver Island, in British Columbia. Like these are all really incredible places, but harsh. And to go in there and put the systems in place necessary to keep everybody safe, both cast and crew, and come out with something that is a great story, entertaining, educational, and that becomes a franchise. I mean, it's a special thing, and it's a really special team that puts it together.
It is, and that one's super interesting too, because the contestants are filming themselves in some aspects. So you're at the mercy of like, do I have someone that can not only survive, but they also have to film themselves, capture the stuff. And I know there's a bit of producing in there as you get to certain segments and as you're able to kind of check on them and things of that like that. But I mean, that's another element that's been added of like, well, you never ran a camera. Here's how you work it. Good luck. I hope you survive. Like that's another thing that's pretty incredible.
Well, in season 1 and season 2, the question was, is this actually going to work? Right? Because it had never been tried before. Les Stroud, right? And Survivor Man. I mean,
he's the OG in all of it.
Absolutely. Right? So, he was the OG, but he would do it for 7 days, and, it was a bit more controlled. Trying it with 10 people on a there's no end in sight, right? There's no time limit to the series, right? So it's unlimited. That was the test. And self-elimination and emergency tap outs and emergency evacuations. The question of, can we get enough content to create an entire series? And in season 1, 6 of the 10 participants dropped out within the first week. So there were 4 people left.
So there's 4 people. You're like, so maybe it isn't going to work.
Correct. And everybody was sweating bullets. The network, and there's not enough credit in the world for the executives at the History Channel for taking a shot on this, right? And because nobody tried it before, and it was completely untested. And then that happens, and they were wondering. And then, of course, it went 56 days, and we were able to squeeze 10 episodes.
All the episodes you need in there.
But it was amazing, and to rely on the cast, the participants, to film themselves and know that we're going to get enough content out of it. It completely changed the way we as storytellers approached a series like that. I completely had to retrain my brain. My team had to retrain their brains. The post-production team had to retrain brand new systems that had never been tried before. But not only that, the doctors, the psychologists, the staff doctors, staff psychologists are writing papers right now about the experience that the participants go through, because no one in history has ever recorded the experience like this. The mental side of it, and the physicality, the physical struggles that these people go through, and come out the other end. Truly, outside of maybe some prison studies and some old papers from the OG, survivalists and adventurers, right? Early time Shackleton. But piecing it together, but to see it in real time like this has been amazing.
Well, I can say the longest that I've done is 62 days. However, total caveat to that, I had 4 days in between that I got to shower and get something to eat and then go back in for another 30 days. And I can tell you that I'll probably never do it again, just based on, and I had a break. I mean, I was 100%, and I'm not alone, but first off, I've got my brother and the crew, and we get to talk, and it's a different ballgame. I would say, people ask me all the time, when you go in to do something like that, what do you train? It's like, it really is mental. I mean, I would say in my experience, 80% mental, 20% physical. That's what I would say. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Those are the exact numbers I would use. And I think what we found is that day 21, being alone is when that true switch happens, because you're working on your food, fire, water, shelter, right? And
that's
winter,
that's crazy. It is exactly. I can remember like 5 day 21s.
Absolutely,
I know exactly where I'm where I was at.
And in this particular series, winter's always coming, right? Like the ticking time clock that we purposely put them in fall, so that they're racing against the clock. It gives them a mission, but they're finding wood resources for building and heat. They're processing, they're setting traps, they're finding fresh water, they're building their shelter to a point where they can survive an Arctic winter, right? I mean, it's got to be hardy. So in that first 21 to 30 days, that's what their mission is, and they can distract themselves, right? When you're all of us have a way to distract ourselves
Yeah.
in today's society. Books, phones,
swiping,
swipe,
left
swipe,
and
swipe.
right. Yeah.
You know, people, conversations. You can distract yourselves. When you're out there and you have none of those things, no writing utensils, you have nothing to distract yourself. And once the bulk of the work is done, you're always working, right?
Yeah.
You're always getting food. You're
you're
always
thinking of
you always-
something
You always
to
have
do,
a lot to do. There's always a project. But the core work, once that slows down, you're left with your thoughts.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have, it's a struggle to face your demons,
Yeah.
right? And everybody's
Yeah.
got them, and they bubble to the
100%.
surface. And can you be with yourself for long periods of time? Some people can, and some people can't, and it changes you.
Yeah, and some people prefer it. Like, I need to be by myself. It really is. It's incredible. That show has set the precedence, I think, and it was crazy. We're doing Dropped on this tiny channel, the outdoor channel, and then all of a sudden this big Alone comes over like, hey, I like that show. That's a cool one, and it was great to see it. And now the success of it, of course, on Netflix, that garners a whole new audience outside of the History Channel, and it's just become a staple, and it won't ever be recreated again. There's so many times that you can, the survival game over the years, Naked and Afraid, do this, do that, all. But I think that was like, okay, we found the heart of survival, and I don't know that that'll ever be replicated again.
It's been actually really gratifying because I've got a couple shows, and we can talk about that later. But in the survival space that we're pitching, and it's gratifying to hear that every network is looking for their next Alone. To be a part of building that franchise. It's actually super gratifying when I hear that, because it's a special thing, and it is not often that happens, because it's sort of genre defining in that way. And that's what we bring to Rivers of Life, right? Is that authentic storytelling, and that's what Alone is. It's the authenticity that I think the audience gravitates towards. What they see themselves in those participants. How would I act? How would I react if I were in that same situation? And it's a testament to the storytellers, the team that puts this together. It's amazing.
That's great. Well, that's a word that we throw around a lot. We do have thing we got to do, authentic.
Let's
Let's
do
get
it.
authentic and have a breakfast whiskey, just because that's something that we got to do with every guest. And
Done.
Even though you and I have got a few meetings we got to go to later, we're still going to light this up and see how it goes. So, I'm a little heavy on my pour. Hold on a second. There we go. And you're a bourbon guy.
I'm a bourbon guy, and I like the Woodford. That's good.
The Woodford's
That's good stuff.
But, hey, we're looking for that, that spirit sponsor here. So just saying, but Woodford is good. So
Cheers, buddy.
I can swallow it. Cheers, buddy.
Boom.
To the journey. That is pretty good.
Yep. Goes
Yeah,
down
that
well.
is pretty good. Hey. Wow. I do like a good bourbon. Oh.
It's a good way to start the day.
We do have some Busch Light sitting there, but I don't know if we're going to make it to lunch if we do that. Wow. Okay, good. Well, look, we can go down this road of all these stories, and I can't wait to get into it. But I do want to back up, because I feel like in order for us to know where we're going, where you're going, let's find out where you've been for a second, because you've had a hell of a BeAlive journey. I've known you since about 2014, I want to say, is when we first talked. We were in the middle of the Drop stuff, and we talked about some things there in 2014. So we were going on 10 years of working together in some capacity, on and off for a little bit, and then kind of diving in. We'll get into that. But let's back up for a second, because I think your story is so interesting on how you got into this field. I get that question, how do you become this? I don't know. Just over time, this is what's happened. But you have such an interesting story. You're from the East Coast, Connecticut, right? Tell us a little bit. Tell our audience that's listening what you were studying and what happened. I love this story, and I think it's just worth telling on where you came from on that side of things.
I get that question all the time too. How do you get into it? And the industry today is not the industry it was when I started. Right? It's 20 plus years now. And the non-scripted industry was in its infancy back then. It's a juggernaut now, right? It's a staple. It's what keeps the lights on at every network. That was not the case when I got into it. And I grew up, like you said, I grew up in Connecticut. I played every sport under the sun. None of them were outdoor adventure things, right? I skied, I hiked a little bit. I didn't get into that until I got into college. And it was there. I went to school in the Adirondacks in New York, and all of a sudden I was exposed to everything: whitewater rafting, fishing, climbing, backcountry, ice climbing, skiing, all these things that, rock climbing that I just absolutely fell in love with. And I threw myself into it.
Yeah.
At every turn, it was everything I could do to do, things in the outdoors, and my passion for it was ignited.
Anything you could find. Like I was that way as well. Like it was literally like, what could I do today that would just get me outside? And I wasn't good at half of them, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm trying it. I'm doing it. I'm
Absolutely.
in it. Like whatever it was, there was a kindred spirit you felt for the outdoors.
Yeah. And so that community was so strong. It was so palpable, and it was so welcoming. And, I became part of a guide program in school. And I mean, it didn't matter whether we were snowshoeing or backcountry skiing or climbing or just doing, whatever it was. We just were always doing it. And the school I went to is called St. Lawrence University, and they have an amazing abroad program.
Yep.
Every continent, lots of countries, 60 programs or something like that. But one of the big ones is in Africa. It's in Kenya.
Okay.
And I really wanted to do that. I'll put that aside for 1 second. So in my freshman year, starting to figure out what you want to study and looking into. And I started taking just a bunch of random courses and figuring it out. One of the courses I took was an anthropology course, right?
That's what I love.
Focused on archaeology. Yeah. And I also took courses in environmental studies and started to kind of go down that path. My freshman year, one of my instructors was like, hey, there's this program. It's sort of a precursor to the Kenya semester program, right? The abroad program. I take 4 seniors for the summer, and we go and we do a dig, in southern Kenya on the border of Tanzania. And one of the seniors dropped out at the last minute.
Oh, so you got
so I got in.
Isn't it amazing how that works?
Yeah.
Life altering moments like that. Like had
Changed.
that senior not like, and then you know what I mean? It's incredible how you guys get on a path.
It's funny. It's like I got goosebumps thinking about it. Like it literally is one of those I got this opportunity that nobody, certainly at that age, at the school at the time, got. And so I got to go. So I did a 2-month dig. It was 40 days or something like that in the backcountry, in the desert. Living on the Maasai land and doing an actual archaeological dig, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
So from that moment on, I was like, "Yep, that's my degree.
digging.
I'm going to be an archaeologist." I'm like Indiana Jones, like that is my it's funny.
On.
People say it. I'm like, "Yep, that was one of my favorite movies growing up."
Mine too, man. Mine too, 100%.
The adventure of it, and I fell in love with Kenya, and so that was just always going to be a thing. So. Cut to a couple of years later, I've got, I'm working towards a dual degree, one in environmental studies and one in archaeology, anthropology. And come my, junior year, went to the Kenya program. So there, I'm living with tribes, living with, I'm terrible at languages, but I was at one point bilingual, and Swahili was the second language.
How much time you were spending there and what you were doing.
Absolutely. And living with tribes, I was living, in farming communities, hunter-gatherers, like the Hadza in Tanzania. I designed an independent study and traveled up the coast, with one other guy in the program, in these little vans, they call them matatus. And we designed this independent study that actually got used on the environmental impact of tourism. It got used by Parliament to lobby for funds.
Oh my God.
it's just like all these crazy things happen while I was there.
Incredible.
While there, I was part of my environmental studies program. I was doing wildlife management. So I was up in northern Kenya, and I was working with elephants, and I was there for a few weeks, and
which are incredible animals.
Absolutely. Like I was
the
following
smartest, the most unbelievably incredible animals.
And I got to track a herd, right? It was just, and here I am. I'm 19, 20 years old. Yeah. I couldn't believe the life.
Wide-eyed, just ready for adventure. Just here we go. And I find yourself in Kenya on a dig.
And you're willing to do anything and everything. So it was like half archaeology, half environmental studies, half sort of cultural immersion, or not half and half, third, I guess.
It's the whiskey.
It's the whiskey talking.
It's a breakfast whiskey.
So the long story is that the person I was working with, the representative that was sort of managing my stay there, said, "Hey, there's a crew coming in from National Geographic, and I want you to take them around with the herd that you're studying." Yep. And again, there was I had no idea about photography or storytelling or camera work or anything. It was just not on my radar.
Yeah.
Nobody in my sphere growing up, like, it wasn't a thing. The school doesn't have a program in media or anything like that. It does now, didn't then. Once I spent a week with them, I was hooked. I was done.
They're documenting things.
Documenting things. They're living this life. They're telling me stories about traveling the world and having all these adventures.
Yeah.
And they weren't much older than me, right? They were in their mid-20s.
Yeah.
There's, the leader,
handful
of older. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do with my life. Right then and there in that week, I knew that's what I was going to do.
You had a lot of life-altering shifts.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm in, I'm going to be an architect, to like literally, and you're like, now I'm in and I'm going to be that.
And
because it's like stacking on top of each other.
Yeah. And so I lived in Kenya for about a year, total.
Yeah.
I got back, finished my degrees, decided to finish out school with those 2 degrees, but I immediately graduated and tried to get a job in the television space. I knew one person, and it was in the ad sales at CBS.
Okay.
So suit and tie, right? Cubicle. I went from
You went from chasing things at elephants in Kenya and around there too.
To live working in Manhattan in Midtown in a cubicle in a in a skyscraper, wearing a suit and tie and being clean shaven. And I was lucky to get that job. I was very fortunate. I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
I was in Manhattan for September 11th.
Oh, wow.
So that's a whole separate story. But it made me realize I had been there about a year. And it made me realize that if we were going to be wiped off the map, I may as well be doing something that I like.
It's life altering.
And one of the shows that I sold for was Survivor. That was one of the shows that I, would sell.
Survivor season 1.
It was season 3.
Season 3.
Yeah,
Okay.
Season 3. So early days, right?
Early days. Like this is like when people were gathering around their TV and listen, they still do. I'm not taking anything away because it's still running, right?
50.
But 50 unbelievable.
Seasons.
But that was, that shook television at the time.
So season 1, right? It was a summer series.
Yep.
Mark Burnett. I've known him for years and years now, but he was the one who brought that, to the U.S. audiences and CBS, right? They took a huge chance. But so season 3 was in Kenya. And so,
so you're coming back full circle.
Yeah, so it was full circle. So so September 11th happens. I went into, the big boss at CBS and who I knew. His name's Joe Abruzet, and if I ever win an Emmy, I still owe him a thank you.
Yeah, you're shouting his name out.
Yeah. He got it. He was like, I get it. I appreciate the candor. So he actually sent my resume over to Burnett's office. I knew nobody.
Yeah.
I was naive to think that the business side of television connected regularly with the creative side of television, and they don't.
Yeah.
1 or 2 people does. Joe was one of those people that could. So I get this phone call from a much lower level person at the company. This woman, Holly Wolford, I owe a lot to her. And at the time she said she was in the IC. She was a line producer.
She was a line producer.
And she said,
funny stories about line producers.
Funny stories. So
we love our line producers.
Yes.
Shout out to Pip.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, she keeps us in line.
So she talks to me for 30 minutes. She's like, you have no experience.
Yeah.
You have no skills.
Yeah.
You've
been to Kenya.
Yeah, that's about it.
Nice. So you got one checkbox.
Yeah,
I've been to Kenya.
I've been to Kenya. And so she was like, listen, just, can't help you, but stay in touch.
Yeah.
So I did. Polite persistence is what I call it.
Yeah.
And so for about 10 months, I was polite and persistent, and I'd write her notes every once in a while just to say hi. Wasn't pushy about asking for a job, just keeping my name in front of her face. And she called me one day and said, your ears must be burning. If you can be on an airplane to Thailand 2 weeks from today, you've got a job for 8 weeks. I said, can I have one night to think about it? She said, yes. I went home, thought about it. Next day, went into the office, put in my 2 weeks notice, quit my full-time job with benefits at CBS.
As a suit to go to Thailand.
I hadn't met anybody in person. I knew no one on the crew.
Yeah.
Everybody was out of LA, but it was an international crew. The first person I met, so I fly to Thailand, I hop another small flight, then a bus to another bus to another bus, and I end up on the southern tip of Thailand on a beach where I finally met some crew from Survivor. And then we took a boat over to this uninhabited island called Koh Tao, and I slept in a tent for 2 months. I tested every challenge. I helped build challenges. I worked on the art department, with the art department building tribal council, and we, with the carpenters and the challenge crew, with the story department, with the camera department. I got to work with every department and fell in love with story.
On that set, as you guys are doing that, and I know back then the challenges, and you are no longer you're voted off the island. I mean, that just literally became a thing.
Yeah.
But like when you guys are sitting there, are you in that room where it's like, all right, what's this chat? Like you're that I know there's a crew for that, but you're there and understanding like we have to put together challenges.
Yes, it's amazing. So there's only 2 people in the entire crew today, maybe 3. There might be an editor, that have been on since season 1. That's
all the way, the entire thing.
Jeff Probst, who, by the way, is amazing and brilliant and the best host in the game.
I would say so.
He's
I mean, that guy is amazing and just
doesn't need a script. You hand him some bullet points and he just goes.
Done.
I've never seen anything like it. Anyway, and John Kerhofer. John is the head of challenges, and he is responsible. He has a team, but he is responsible for coming up with all of the challenges, and then he works with the head of the art department. At the time, it was a guy named Dan Monday. They would dream up the challenges, but they would get input from everybody, right? Like, what do you think? If you've got a challenge idea, bring it to us. So I'm like this, 20-something kid.
Like, I got a challenge.
Yeah, here's the challenge.
Can you make it through? Well, they can't die, but let's test them.
But that's what it is. So there's this team called the Dream Team, and it's still to this day a big thing on Survivor. And ultimately, they get body doubles for the cast.
Okay.
And so I was a dream teamer. That was my first job in television.
Okay.
And so all the aerials, when you see an aerial in the middle of a challenge, it's not the actual.
It's the dream team.
It's the dream team, right? Second unit. But what the dream team does is they test the challenges over and over and over. A, to see if they work.
Okay.
B, so the camera department can
understand where the shots are going to be.
Exactly, because they get one shot at it with the participants.
Yeah.
There's no redos. They don't do cutaways. They don't get. So if you see someone's hands in the middle of a challenge, it's a dream teamer's hands.
Yeah.
So they can't get all that stuff with the actual participants, but they also don't want to mess with the flow of the
you need that to happen in real time.
And so the camera department
capture so much
because there's like 18 cameras on every challenge, so they need to know their marks.
Yeah.
And it was still to this day one of the best jobs I've ever had. So I was able to do that. That was season 5, and then I became an associate producer and then producer and field producer.
Kind of worked your way through the rank.
Yeah. So
and that world's crazy because it literally is. And having been in it now for so long, it's like it's line item by line. Your job is to go from this kind of producer to eventually executive producer. But in between there is a whole lot of like I'm proving myself to get to this segment producer, supervising producer, this producer, and it's an incredible journey all the way through that. And it makes a big difference when you have that title behind your name on a set.
Absolutely, and you're only in the freelance world, right? Everything in the entertainment
your pay rate,
industry,
I would imagine, as you're going, right, it goes up,
and it's tough, and you to earn those spots, right? It's hard because people don't necessarily want to take a shot on someone that's never done the role, and so you have to really earn that trust and earn. And it can be really difficult.
Do you think you kind of have to almost do the role prior to actually being given the role? Like prove that you can actually be like, so you're kind of working with said producer to show, hey, I can, and then someone goes, look, you've been doing this for a little bit. Now you are versus like, I feel like you can move up.
And it's, and you're, it's the industry. I mean, that gets to the heart of the industry, right? The industry is built on a freelance, workforce. And it always has been in the entertainment industry, right? And so sometimes you just need to pay bills. So you'll take a show that you just, it may be one that you don't like or believe in, but you take it. Yeah. I was fortunate enough I got in the door with Burnett. I mean, that was already like, it was like the biggest, it was a big shop. Yeah. And back then, he only had 2 shows. He had Survivor and Eco Challenge. I mean, he was just getting started,
but now look at that.
And then
entire
Apprentice
world
came, and then Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Like, and he just, he's a juggernaut. He's the most prolific producer in certainly out of the U.S. Although he's from the U.K. But he's one of the most prolific producers in the history of television. But at the time, he was just getting started, and
this was his shot,
it was amazing to be a part of that franchise, but to watch and learn from him and all the people that he surrounded himself with. The king of surrounding himself with people smarter than him, right? He really did learn so much.
I mean, all great leaders, right? Like fill the room with smart people, and because if you and I are the smartest people in our rooms, we're in the wrong room.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, we're in the wrong room.
We are in trouble.
It's about the team,
and you know, it is that, right? I think a superpower for any leader is know enough to know what you don't know.
Exactly.
Right, and that's okay. We shouldn't be experts in all things. What we can be experts at are a few things, and then experts at reading people and knowing when we've got the right person in the right seat.
100%.
And then trusting that person.
Know when to pass it off. Know when to pass it off and say, this is why you're here. And there's a vision for it, but you got to know when to say, this is your role, and now you're accountable for it, but together we're going to do it.
We're going to do it.
But I trust that you're going to make it happen.
And to know when it's right and when it's wrong. And I was fortunate enough to come up through some really amazing shops. So, Burnett, Craig Pelagian, his reputation precedes him. That's another conversation for another day. Brilliant businessman and producer. Yeah. His bedside manner. I'll let the people that know him decide that. But when you look at original productions, right? Tom Beers. I mean, these are just prolific producers and the leaders of getting the industry to where it is today. So I had the opportunity to work at all three of those shops. Chris Colin, right? He's like the modern day. He is the most one of the most respected producers in modern television history at Kinetic Content. So I had this opportunity to learn from all of these
from everybody
people
throughout that entire process.
Not only from how to be a producer and tell great stories and make good television, but how to build the business, how to run the business, what the operational systems that behind the scenes, what they invest in, how they invest, in their people, in their post-production facilities, their media management, their production management, their development processes. It's been an amazing journey, from those early days to where we are today, where I am today, and cut to here I am, executive producing alone, right? I the pinnacle of my career was
you've made it to that point.
Creating and executive producing and helping to define this franchise, right? It's in 80 countries or something like that. Right?
Talk about juggernaut. It's a juggernaut.
It's a juggernaut. It's got it's been franchised. There's original versions of it in I don't know how many countries,
different languages, everywhere.
Yes, and it's spectacular to see. I didn't own it, right? I was doing that on behalf of ITV.
Somebody else,
and I could still be doing that show. Frankly, I could. And sometimes I wonder what it would be like if I were. The reality is, I wouldn't have learned anything new. From now until
you would have settled in. You'd have settled in, and you're that, and great paying, great life, great everything you wanted.
The adventure.
But there's just something else that's scratching the itch, right? Where you're like, I got to do something.
I want to build something that I have more skin in the game. I want to be invested in it. I want to I want to pick the projects. I want to build the team and have something that is mine, that is ours, that that I'm not just doing a project for somebody else. Because I loved that. I loved it. And that is there's a huge career in that. And again, I could still be doing it. But I think this, it was the next evolution of it. And learning from all of those people that we just talked about and saying, okay, I'm going to take the best of what I learned from them and combine it into hopefully doing what, and the industry has changed dramatically.
Oh yeah.
So when we first started, I got what do you do for a living? Oh, you work in reality television. And it was like the bastard stepchild of the entertainment industry.
Here we go again.
And I'm like, are you a teacher? I would never say so. I would never degrade your job. Oh, you're a teacher. That's it. It was amazing that people had the audacity to say it. But you put something out there publicly, art of any sort, and you're gonna get opinion.
Right? Yeah, you get chastised a little bit. Well, so that takes us. I mean, and again, along that career, Top Shot with Colby, who's a friend of ours. He's fantastic. Again, another guy that just the salt of the earth, like literally just such a good dude. You were able to work with him. We've obviously had conversations about trying to do more stuff with Colby. Just all these paths had crossed, and just like, and what I find interesting is, as you're in Kenya and National Geographic shows up and you see that, you're like, I'm going to do that. For me, on my side, I'm guiding and a television show shows up. Right. And I'm like, wait, you guys get to film this? Like, it's very similar like circumstances around, well, now I'm going to do that. Like whatever I'm going to do.
Me to do the thing I love to do?
Yeah. I was like, hold on a second. So you're going to film and I'm going to like, and then you're going to put this on television, but you're going to go around the world and you're going to film all the hunts and adventures and all the stuff. And for you, it was like, wait, I'm here in I'm doing this thing. You're filming these elephants. And now you're going to say and then, so it's kind of like, there's two things that like, in our careers, probably right around the same time, honestly, that was like, hey, we're going to change paths, which ultimately led us to 2014. And we actually called we had a conversation. I can still remember being at the old building having the conversation, because I think at the time we were looking for somebody for Rusted Rooster, which was a previous production house that BeAlive now owns. And it was one of those things where we were looking for a president of studio. And you were in that crossroads of like what we just talked about, do I stay here and just crush Alone forever, or I'm looking for that next project. I think you went on to do another season of Alone, or 2 seasons of Alone. Mm-hmm. We went on, and I think that was perfect. The timing wasn't right. I think we would have different paths if that was the timing at that point. I feel like now fast forward 2 years later, and BeAlive comes about. And I think because you've been in it with me since the very, very, very beginning, to be able to tell the story of BeAlive as it was meant, for people to understand where we are today. I don't know that we've ever talked about it publicly, like to really say, hey, this is what we started out to do. And you came in, we were able to get you to Midland. We raised a seed round dollar, and we were, hey, this is going to be something we're going to build together. And we set out to build a network. Because and this is the crazy part, you think about it, 2016, Netflix wasn't Netflix at that time. I mean, it wasn't the juggernaut it is today in 2016. It was like, there's nobody doing this in the outdoor space. It was almost like it was separated. It was like there was a few of them, but there wasn't the big ones that are out there today. They didn't exist.
They didn't exist. I mean, the intention was to create a digital network devoted to outdoor adventure.
Yes.
We were partnering with a linear network.
Yes.
Which was, I mean, it was a dream, right?
It was a dream. We had a deal that was moving forward, and we were making headway. And like anything in television, leadership changes, CEO change, completely new mandate.
And they shut her down. There was a CEO change at the linear network that we were partnering with, and they decided to go in a different direction. And all of a sudden, here we are. We're a year into it.
Yep.
We've spent money. We've built content. We've hired staff.
Yep.
And now we're untethered.
Yep.
We are completely untethered and have no idea what we're going to do with all this content. We spent about 10 months or so trying to sort that out. Burning dollar. We had leadership inside of BeAlive at the time.
Yeah, because we did not run the company at the time.
Right.
There was other people that had a vision for where it was going, and the unfortunate part was when it fell apart, there wasn't a backup plan to what was happening. Correct. And I think that's when it got rocky.
Yeah. So we were brought. I mean, I was sort of recruited by the former leadership was out of Silicon Valley basically, and they were really adept at raising funds. And creating big businesses on this accelerated, sort of growth trajectory. Yeah. But not totally adept in the media space, right? Yeah. It wasn't their bread and butter. The business acumen was sort of what we were all banking on. And when it fell apart, they didn't know what to do with a media company. Yeah. And so they departed. And and it was rocky.
It was rocky.
And then of course the pandemic hit. Yeah. And so we're sitting here with 10 months in, trying to figure out what we're going to do with BeAlive, how it's going to operate. How we're bleeding money. Yeah. And
and somehow this was on us, right? Yes. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like I had Rusted Rooster, you were here working, or those two, they were not connected in any way. Right. As a matter of fact, I was filming Travel Channel, and I was still doing we weren't in that space. And then it was like, we got together and we're like, can we do this? Like, this is our opportunity to try. And like you said, the former regime left. the gentleman I have absolutely no ill will towards whatsoever. I think he's a great guy. I think he just got caught up in stuff.
Yeah.
The other I have no words for. And they know exactly who they are, and I have no words for them. But I think we got thrown into this position, and we sat down, and we're like, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And over time, we went down to 4 of us, and we started to rethink this whole scenario and what it was going to be. And sustainability started to come up, and how we're going to storytell. And we went really truly B2B, and we had an incredible opportunity with Dow, our partners that are here in Midland, and we landed it. And when we landed it, we're like, okay, it's like things are starting to turn, but what is this going to be? And little did we know back then that was like the first little tiny turn of this giant wheel that we were about to spin for the next 5 years. And it just kind of started
It was the first step towards brand funded content.
It was.
We didn't know it.
We didn't know at the time, and we were way ahead of the game at that point.
I mean, I'm sure there was a company out there that was calling it brand funded, but it was not a commonly used sort of.
This is 5
term.
years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is actually pre-pandemic. It's right before the pandemic, because that actually through the pandemic we were able to kind of develop all of this. And honestly, I know it was very hard on a lot of businesses, and it was terrible. For us, I thought it was probably one of the best things that could have happened, because it gave us time, and we could focus. And when they shut production down, we were in a position to say, well, we're developing and we're building, and we had enough capital to basically get through that without having to staff up a studio or build anything, so that when we came out of it, and I can remember so many meetings of us sitting in there going, when this does take off, we need to be ready.
We need to be
We
primed.
need to be ready to do that.
It can't be understated. It can't be overstated enough, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Again, a fork in the road, and that was one of them. We were untethered. We had this amazing, serendipitous conversation with some people at Dow where they lost an opportunity with National Geographic. We're storytellers. We're right here in the same town. We start talking to them about some of their needs. Sustainability becomes a core part of the conversation. This brand funded sort of kernel that we weren't calling it that, but working with a brand, Dow in this case, to develop out something in a space that they need development in. You're right. We signed a contract with them, and 3 weeks later,
February and
March, the world shut down. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves with a contract that's signed, funding coming in, and now there's an army of freelance production people that are at our fingertips, where it would have been much harder to get access to people at the level that we ended up getting, right? The Mateos of the world, these people that are prolific storytellers in their space, and they need jobs. And so we had one, and we were one of the few places that had work to.
We were
to
open.
give.
It was weird. We were like, is this going to last? We're open for business, stronger than we ever were in the middle of COVID.
And
COVID. Sustainability didn't feel weird to us, because I think we both come from a place where we love protecting the places we play. I mean, it wasn't like, well, we're taking a completely right turn and we're going to go talk about something we don't know. When we say sustainability, we're talking about conservation. We're talking about earth. We're talking about protecting national parks, forests, rivers. Like all of that was very on our radar of second nature.
Yeah, part of the pun. Second nature. Like it's our first love, right? Is those things. And so it was weird for me all these years later, 20 years later, to come back and go, oh, I have a degree.
I was just going to say, so you have this degree in environmental studies, and now you're coming back and saying, wait, now I'm telling environmental stories.
And to take what I've learned over all these years in all the mainstream space and the television space, and to apply it to, and again, we didn't know what we were building exactly at the beginning of the Rivers Are Life journey, right? But we knew what we wanted to tell stories. We wanted to tell stories about people that are protecting the planet. Tell it in an entertaining way, in a character-driven way, and it's the evolution of it has been spectacular. Coming out of COVID, we had a plan. We knew what the platform is today, what Rivers Are Life is. is what we dreamed up back then.
So to get if you're listening, BeAlive has the BeAlive brand, and then we also have Rivers Are Life. And what Zach's referring to, if you go to riversareLife.com, that's basically, it's one of our businesses, one of our companies now, which it's over the years evolved into its own entity, its own brand, its own team. We've got an entire group on the brand side. We've got Zach oversees a group on the studio side who is telling incredible stories. And this entire brand is focused on basically protecting the world's waterways, inspiring people to take action, right? To say, let's, whether it's fishing, hunting, rowing, kayaking, or just, cleaning up the rivers, we need them. And it's so important. And we can get into a little bit of that, but there was a stat one time that Zach and I were sitting around this conference table, and there was a very, very high-powered individual from a company that was sitting at the table, and she said, well, there's 10 rivers in the world and she gave a stat. And the 10 rivers thing, I think we both looked at each other and we're like, what? Wait, say that again? And that's what kicked off kind of our no one's ever said the river thing. Right. It's always about the oceans. It's not about, so we kind of started talking about if the oceans are the heartbeat, the rivers are the arteries. Right. And if they're clogged, then the ocean's going to not be good and the heart's going to fail. And so we started thinking through that. We early on debunked the stat quickly.
We did. Through the research.
And we had to shift from, as any business, we shifted from, okay, that's what it's called, to this is what it's called, Rivers Are Life, to open that up and to start to really get into the entire ecosystem of rivers. But we didn't know what that was going to be. It was like, it was going to be one thing. And then through time, that evolution and all these peaks and valleys that you and I've been through with partners, with networks, with, being early adopters to funding, impact documentary, all these things. We had a conversation one time, Zach and I, with a guy from, was it NBC? It was NBC. Yeah. And we were telling him, and we said we had a natural history doc.
Right.
And he was on the other line and he said, no, you don't, because there's people in it. And we're like, oh yeah, I guess that's right. There's no natural history. The planet Earth doesn't have people. Right. So we're like, well, what do we have? And we didn't know. And we were like, we have an impact documentary. And then, eventually now it's like, it's a common theme.
It's a common theme, right? Yeah. We were on the leading edge of that. It was not something that was commonly talked about. There were impact documentaries that just weren't necessarily coined that. Not that we coined it. I'm sure. I'm sure others were calling it that, but it is much more commonly referred to those things. We just didn't know.
We just didn't know what we had.
And it goes back to this evolution of, we knew as a company what we stand for, right? And we knew that mainstream television and sort of digital content they were running parallel to each other, but they were parallel, started parallel, but then started veering towards each other, and they've collided. Yeah, that hadn't totally happened 5 years ago. No. It's happened a lot more. I would say in the last 2 years, it's really it sort of imploded on itself. Yeah, and we have a foot firmly planted in each space. What we've realized with Rivers Are Life is there's a appetite for that type of content. And when I say content, I mean that the community of sustainability, of conservation. Everybody, it's important to everybody. And you said it earlier. We are doing for rivers what has already been done for oceans. Yeah. And rivers are equally as important to life on this planet. And some might argue even more so. Yep. Given that historically, the human race has relied on rivers for everything, right? For food, transportation, for drinking water, for agriculture. It's amazing, the wildlife component. And that's the natural history component of it. And to your point, when you add people and wildlife and tech and solutions, all of a sudden it's not one type. Yeah, it's not one genre of storytelling. It becomes multiples. And what is that? It's impact.
Yeah, that was some of the most unbelievable times for us, I think, in our company's history. Right. The development of all that, and as tough as it was through that period, financially and growing, and what are we going to do? And there's periods of time, and we went without paychecks. But we believed in it the whole time, and we're like, there's going to be something on the other side of this. And I think that's a lot about entrepreneurship and what it's about. Like, you have to be prepared to go in and say, okay, this is going to be really, really bad, but it's on me to fix, and it's on my team, and you work together when you have a team of individuals, which we've been very fortunate to have over the years, that believe in it as well, and you have a certain why factor to why you do it, and they're like, I can get along with that, then everybody's willing to go in the right direction.
Yeah, there's some quotes that I've heard recently about, being an entrepreneur, and never have I thought that it was more true, right? You stare into the abyss while eating glass.
Yes,
right.
That's about right. Yeah, and I got a lot of glass in my mouth over the years, but it's so true because it's like, how are we going to do this while chewing glass? Such a visual,
right? Yeah. And the thing that I find fascinating about it is you're not really, our jobs aren't to solve, to talk about what's going right. It's to solve the problem. We only get the problems, really, and all of a sudden you're doing the work, sort of the crappiest work in the business, because you're solving for problems that really only we can. Not because we don't trust others to do it. They have jobs to do, and they're doing the things that are positive, right? They're doing all the great work. They're creating the brands. They're executing the brands. They are, creating the content and executing on the content. And that's, they have their own problems and hurdles, but it's tangible. But when you're looking at the business, when you're looking at the structure of the business and the go forward plan and raising funds and the hurdles that we face every day, 9 times out of 10, it's usually the problems that we're faced with, and we've got to figure out the solutions.
Yeah, you're solving for those issues. And over time, for us, I think, and it's come back full circle. You're in town. We're having we have great meetings. All these things are happening, which is amazing. But to see something that we thought of that it started on paper. It started with a conversation. To see it now in fruition, Rivers Are Life, a full-fledged brand. Thousands upon thousands of followers, if not tens of thousands of followers, emails. And then to see the change that it's made, like that to me is what I'm most proud about. Our partners that are involved, to see the River Heroes and to have conversations with them, and to see that storytelling has changed their lives. That's exciting to me, and like that's the stuff that when I lay down at night, I'm very proud of. And I think you're the same way. I mean, we've seen some of our River Heroes that we've told stories on. River Heroes are individuals, communities that are really focused on doing great things, and they're boots on the ground. Without those people physically doing those things, we wouldn't have clean waterways or clean water or rivers or wildlife or any of this stuff. And so as we highlight them, to hear them, and we've had it recently, we were at a NASCAR event together, we were able to kind of sit with some of them and talk with them, and they're getting funding, they're growing, they're getting awareness from just storytelling. And so it just comes back to what you and I've always said: stories have the power to change the world. And here we are telling stories about these incredible people who are now seeing that impact. Do you think that, is it the same for you?
Same. I mean, so right. The idea is we're using our skill set to highlight people that are already doing the work, the physical work, to positively impact rivers. Right. These are stories of hope. This is a platform dedicated to what can be positively done to help our river system. There's so much doom and gloom in the world, and that's not what Rivers of Life is about. We're about highlighting the positivity. And these folks are doing all this work in their own silos, on a global basis, right? We've been on 5 continents in the past 18 months, filming stories about these individuals or individual organizations, the River Heroes, as you said. But now we're creating a network. We're creating a community where they can interact with one another. They can support, where through our partners, Dow, and our NGO partners, our education partners like LSU, we can offer help. We can offer assistance in the form of access to data, value in kind, hard goods, research. What are the things that these folks need? And they realize they have a support system. And that's what Rivers of Life truly is to enable more work to be done, to enable the River Heroes to grow their organizations, if possible, to make a greater impact. And that collective good has the best and biggest impact. And if our audience can therefore watch, be inspired to protect and explore, which are 3 tenets, right? our rivers and the natural world around them in any way, a small way or a big way, then that collective action creates even more impact, and the cycle continues. And that's the intention. And it is super gratifying, hard work, not always, it's thankless at times, but it's what the intention is. And it's so pure. And it's amazing to think that we could take our experiences from our past in this industry and apply it to something that's actually doing some good in the world.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's one of our greatest achievements to see it, again, from an idea to where it is throughout what it's been and how it's affected our company, because that also jump-started, the studio side of the business, which, you've been running now since that inception. And now, even more exciting, you're in Bozeman with it. First of all, I'm so jealous. We had a very long conversation about this when he moved the studio to Bozeman. I thought to myself, well, that's business trips timed perfectly. As a matter of fact, next week, I'm headed out to Bozeman for a great festival that we're doing out there and spend some time which is great. But you're out in Bozeman. You've got an incredible team at the studio. We've got the BeAlive brand. We're back in a bigger way. We're building and creating brands that inspire people to chase their passion. And we have Rivers Are Life, which is inspiring people to get out and change the waterways and just to see our businesses now. Like you and I were sitting at one point across from each other at a very empty table,
staring at each other, twiddling our thumbs, trying to figure out what we were going to do. And how are we going to fill our days?
Is there moments in that journey that stand out to you more than others? Like, is there any that you could even reflect back on and say, you know what, there was a pivotal moment, or God, do you remember this really sucky moment? There's a lot of them. I know. So is there anything that stands out to you?
There are a couple. I remember sitting at the other building, the old building, and sitting in my office going, there's nothing to do. Yeah. There's literally nothing.
That's such a good point.
Right.
Because there was days where we're like, I don't know what to do.
Right. And to get that wheel grinding and starting, it pushing a boulder up a hill. I will say, talking to Diego at a party, at my house, and realizing Diego was, the former president of plastics at Dow. I didn't know him. I didn't know that was his job. He asked me what I do for a living, and I told him, and I could see him kind of cock his head, and he was curious, and he said, well, how does one develop?
How does one do this?
Yeah, how does one do this? And when I told him, he said, I'm the president of plastics at Dow, and we just lost this huge deal with National Geographic. Our team should talk. And I went, okay, let's do this.
We should.
And all of a sudden, it was just an absolute, fork in the road. The other one I can remember is right before Christmas, we were supposed to get a signed agreement from Dow. It was in December, right? It was December 20 something. Yeah. And I was still living, we were still living here, and I was walking in the woods with my dog behind the house. It was cold, it was snowy. It was like December 1st or something, second, and everybody was going on holiday break. Dow was going on holiday break, and we were waiting for a signature from Dow that was it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was going to change our
trajectory of the business at that point.
It was going to change. It was a make or break.
Yep.
We were supposed to get it that day, and it didn't come. And you and I went, all right, well, we're going to go into Christmas with that hanging over our heads.
Yep.
And we came back from the holiday. And so the entire Christmas break, that entire couple of weeks, it was just, is this happening? Is it not happening? Is this over? Is it not over? And then we came back from the break, and they signed it, and sometime in January. Yeah. And, maybe we probably pushed that into February. Yeah. And that's when lockdown happened, right? Like 3 weeks later. It was like such a fork in the road. Yeah. And then all of a sudden that changed, they kept the lights on, and production companies all over the world were shuttering. They were closing their doors, and we were turning on lights. It was such a moment for us.
It was an incredible moment. It was probably, I think it was the Christmas before that. There was a moment when the board and some of the investors, again, you and I were on the outside. Yeah. So we're learning in real time, and we were invested in the business, and we're learning in real time. And it was the day after Christmas, and I had one of the investor group called me and said, I need you here. And I'm like, it's December 26th. They're like, today. And I was like, okay. And they were like, you got to fix this. I'm like, I don't even know what happened. It's Christmas. What do you mean? And then it was like, well, you're going to fix this. And it was like, okay, I guess we're going to fix this. And then from there, it just kind of started into, what we just discussed. But I'll never forget that day, because, I've had a lot of Christmases since where I'm like, thank God I'm not sitting in that office again,
Right.
But yeah, I remember that. And Dow, if you're listening, you don't know that, but thanks.
But
you literally, look, we've earned every bit of it from this point forward. We've built so much with them, and they're incredible. And they've been, and look, you know what? People have problem maybe with the Red Diamond. I have none, because I have seen the inner workings of that company. We know the CEO personally. He's an incredible man. He has incredible insight. He cares about his people. Dow has done incredible things, not just for this community. And yeah, they've had some unintended consequences along the way. So has every 100-plus-year-old company that exists on the planet. You can't find one that hasn't. And the times have done. What I can say is, you and I both know this intimately with them. They are invested in changing and growing and becoming a company that is responsible. And I think for them to be that, you've got to lean in. And we talk about it all the time. You know the quote, the Jane Goodall. It's if you're not working with them, it takes lift from all sides, right?
It takes a lift from all sides. And I couldn't agree more. Dow has time and time again, I was skeptical. Honestly, I was skeptical at first, but they have proven time and time again that they are authentically driven to do better and do good in the world.
Yep.
And they are spending a tremendous amount of money, effort, resources on doing that. They are a plastics business. They are a chemical company. Mm-hmm. And they exist. Our world exists. It runs on their products. Mm-hmm. And
it does.
And it would be silly, it would be naive of anybody to think that we could just stop and communication systems, healthcare systems, mm-hmm. food processing and packaging systems.
Yeah.
Everything has a touch point to their products. Can they be done more efficiently, more sustainably?
Sure.
Better recycling processing? Absolutely. And that's the thing. Dow believes it vehemently. And it does take a lift from all sides. And you're right. Jane Goodall, I talk about her quote incessantly, because she is the queen of sustainability. Yeah. And her opinion in the 80s of working with the oil and gas companies to preserve chimpanzee habitat in the Congo, she said, I would be a hypocrite not to work with them.
Yeah.
I fly in airplanes, I drive in cars, I use petroleum-based products. Not only that, but they have the financial backing, they have the access to policy makers, so therefore change. They need to understand what they were doing wrong, therefore they have the responsibility to fix it. Mm-hmm. And if I can work with them and make some real change from the inside out, I'm going to do it. I might have some naysayers. I might have some detractors along the way that don't totally understand or agree with that, but that's the belief. Mm-hmm. And if she is the shining beacon of what can be done and what can be accomplished, and it does take a lift from all sides. It takes government, it takes NGO, it takes industry, mm-hmm. and now it takes storytellers, because that's how the general audience, consumers, are aware of what's happening and who's doing what work and where.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is our industry now is an integral role where, when we started the conversation and we're talking about ABC, NBC, there were 4 networks, 5 networks that controlled it all. Now, being in the production space, in the storytelling space, has an integral role, because distribution is everywhere. We say it all the time. It's the wild, wild west. There's things that, used to be 100% exclusive, non-exclusive. We're getting the backgrounds of this is behind the scenes of the production industry and how it works, not just in, hunting television or, that stuff. We're talking about big shows that we continue to build, that you're continuing to build, the studio and looking for the distribution to Apple, Netflix. But now, you can have a whole series on TikTok. You can have a whole series on Instagram Reels and Facebook Watch, and you name it, they're everywhere, but you have to be there in some aspects. And so it does require storytellers to amplify whatever message a brand is putting out. And they can come up with a creative marketing campaign, or they can authentically tell stories that matter to them. And that's where we come in, is we try to take that story and then we build an ecosystem around that story. Like, here's the character that's doing amazing, and here's what you're doing around it to support that character. And we've seen that resonate, and brands that are leaning in are at the forefront. Brands that are saying, well, we're going to continue to just do our Super Bowl commercial and that's it. And we're going to, you're seeing that connection is not there.
And it comes back, that comes back to that brand funded, model. And that is becoming more and more relevant because the cable industry is frankly dying, right? Mm-hmm. And it's being usurped by the streaming portion of the entertainment industry, which is fast approaching the old cable model.
Yes, exactly.
But brands that would advertise, within the cable sort of ecosystem are pulling those funds out, and now they still need to use those marketing dollars. And then these large brands all have ESG and conservation goals, long term, near term, and short term, and hence the conservation storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're leaning into that brand funded content model. But to your point, fast channel distribution, international, domestic, social. You've got television units themselves, Vizio, LG, Sony.
Yeah, the physical form of
television. They each have their own, content ecosystems. So there's so many more places to put it, but there's not a lot of dollar.
Yeah.
And so the brand funded element, right, is how do we become associated with a brand like Rivers Our Life that is doing good in the world? We will also do good in the world. We want to support people doing good in the world. We create content. That content then goes onto these platforms. We get eyeballs, not only for what we're doing, but most importantly for what the River Heroes are doing. The brands get to partake in that, and the circle continues, and the cycle continues. I mean, the fact that we have access to over 300 million people through our distribution pipeline is insane, given that you could have far less than that on a typical network that might own the content.
Yeah.
It's
on
incredible.
A typical
Cable network.
Just by spacing it out and by using it smart and going out correctly. And Zach and I have said this a lot. Branded content is 100% different than brand funded content. Branded content is where you put your logo. You say, what's in it for me? Mm-hmm. Brand funded content is you care about something, you care about it authentically as a brand, and you go tell the story regardless of how many times your logo's in it. And we're seeing that shift. We read an article recently. There was a guy that's doing it from another production house, and I was reading an article in Realscreen. And he brought up a great point. If a brand can go out and spend $700 million to put their name on the outside of crypto.com stadium.
Right, on a football
stadium. Why would a brand not look at storytelling as a way to say, if I put that same money, I could have the next Ted Lasso. I could have the next, I could have and by association, my brand has brought this to the network. And we're seeing the shift happening right now. And the brands that are embracing it, we're seeing a big uptick. I mean, Mattel is the greatest example of any of them, with $1 billion franchise of, we'll make Barbie, not you.
Right.
Look at what they've done, right? So, I mean, there's big brands. You're seeing studios pop up, right? Starbucks has their own studio. And AB InBev has their own studio. And as these people are setting up these studios, they're coming to storytellers and saying, how do we do this?
How do we do this? And Chick-fil-A has their own streaming service.
Exactly.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And they're paying, cable rates, right, for the type of content. So it is really starting to pop up. Intel was a leader in that. Yeah. They've been supporting and content creation for years. They also have a multi-billion-dollar ad spend. Yeah. Right. So they it starts with these big brands that have the wherewithal to do it, have the need to do it. Yeah. It's We're still learning and growing.
Of course,
we've come a long way, and it's been it's been fun. We talk about the pendulum swing, right? We know when the pendulum is swinging and it's positive, we know it's about to kick us in the teeth.
Yep.
In the next day or two. It
usually happens. It usually happens. It's like, we'll celebrate a win, and then whammo, we're like, ooh, that one sucked, and then away it goes. And but I think that's what. So going back to kind of like BeAlive and what we've built.
Yeah.
We've got these businesses we've built together along the way, and then we also we've gone through this new wave of brand funded content. We're leaning into that, and we're continuing to build out on that side. But that pendulum swing, that's where I think we've been able to adjust the most, right? What happens when the pendulum swings back? And it does. It hits you square in the nuggets. What are you going to do? How are you going to address it? What's going to happen, right? And I think we've been able to say, ow, let's keep moving.
Let's go.
You have to, right?
And that's the chewing glass part, right?
Exactly.
Right? It's like, okay, you gotta figure it out, and you just keep going. And I think that's the thing about building a business, about entrepreneurship is that you just keep taking a step forward, even if you've got knocked back too. You keep taking that step forward, and eventually, something breaks, something gives. We're on the precipice of a major partnership, and for Rivers Are Life, and I believe that's going to be a pivotal moment, and I think that's going to open up. It's with an international NGO to be named once the contract is signed. But
hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll be signed.
And we'll dub.
We'll put it right here, here, guys. Put it right here between. There you go, right here. Bing. There you go.
But I think it's one of those things that's going to.
If we didn't sign, just put an X right here.
But reputationally for us, it to me it is gratifying because we've built something that they recognize as positive enough to participate with. And in 2 years of actual, since launch, we've come a long way. So celebrating those wins, taking a step back, even when we're getting punched in the teeth, to take a step back. Look at it from a 50,000 foot view and see what we've built. See that how that we've got amazing employees, that we've got brands, that we've got content under our belts, that we've got distribution partnerships, that we've got brand partnerships, that we have corporate partnerships, and from where we were sitting in a room. In the old office, staring at the wall, twiddling our thumbs, wondering what the hell we were doing,
chewing glass,
to where we are today. I mean, it's night and day, and that to celebrate those wins and then jump back into the fray. It's like I sometimes need to remind myself: pick your head up, get a little sunshine, breathe some fresh air, and then get back to the grindstone.
It is incredible. I'll call you and say, dude, I have to get out of the box because I call my office the box. It contains me, and I have to get out of the box, and I have to go get that fresh air. For me, I mean, just going and mowing the food plots at the farm for 2 hours on a tractor just gets me in a different headspace. And I think it's so important as you are an entrepreneur, you have to take a step back. We've talked about this before, the forest and the trees, right? It's really hard sometimes to celebrate the wins, but you have to. Like the littlest of wins, you have to celebrate them along the way because you don't know when the next one's coming. You really don't. You're digging and you're grinding, but you don't know when the next one's coming. I think our relationship has been super interesting over the years. Sometimes those that know Zach and I, they might think we're arguing. They think we're yelling at each other. Vigorous debates. But him and I, we tend to talk loudly. We talk loudly because we're passionate about what we're saying. So as Zach and I start a conversation, it could be about the exact same thing that we're both on the same page. We start here, and then by the time we're done, they're like, God, they're going at it in there. And really, him and I are just like, and that's right, it's gonna. And then they think that we're yelling. We're really not. And we've had to say to each other, like sometimes in mid conversation, I'm not yelling at you. Yeah, I know. Okay. And then we keep going. So we've had this kind of yin and yang scenario. I think we've got optimist and like eternal of like, dude, we'll get it, to like optimist and
realist. Is what
that's what it is. It's optimist and realist of like, that's a bold move there, buddy. And it's like, well, feels like we're going to get there, so we've had this kind of yin and yang the entire time.
What I've found over the years is, and it took me a minute to realize it. We are more alike than we are different. And which is why we go high, we're passionate, we talk fast, we talk loud, we believe vehemently in what we're doing. Yeah. And it does take a lot of vigorous debate, a lot of conversation to shake loose.
It does.
The core, right? To the thing that, and sometimes we don't know what that core is until we've debated it a lot.
Exactly. I think especially in the building phase of a business, right? There's a vigorous debate and then an autopsy. So we make a decision. So there's a big vigorous debate and then we go, okay, one of us is going to win, one of us, or a mutual of,
we're going to decide
here's
on
what
that
we
course,
are.
Right.
Boom, there's the decision. And then there's always the autopsy. How did it do? Did we make the right decision? Which usually leads to another vigorous debate because you're trying to find your systems and your processes and your why and all the things along the way, which I think are super, super important. But what I've seen over the 5 years is 5 years of vigorous debate, decisions, and autopsies that eventually leads you to a flywheel, if you will, back to the book, Good to Great, to this flywheel concept of it's happening. And now our vigorous debates are way less because we know what we're doing. We know how we're doing it. Now it's really, how do we say no? I think we're more aligned there of like, we're going to have to say no because that doesn't fit our model, which I think in the beginning as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, you're grabbing onto and what's going to pay the bills today? How am I going to, and everything is a yes, I'll make it work. I'll figure it out. Now we get a chance to say, you know what, it's going to distract us.
Well, and we were, I don't know, our journey is what our journey is. We wouldn't be where we are today without all those issues that we faced. But we were saddled with fixing a business, fixing problems that we didn't create.
Correct.
And on top of that, building the business that is today. So we're kind of doing both things, which is, I mean, sometimes those are diametrically opposed, right? Yeah. You know, the thing you need to do to fix the problems that were created is not necessarily the right thing for the business we were building. Yeah. And we often talk about building the airplane as we're flying.
Literally.
And I think that's probably true of most entrepreneurs, right? I mean, you start out with one thing. I mean, we're all fans of the podcast, How I Built This, right? And how often do you hear these prolific business owners talk about what they started out with is not the business that they actually built and it grew into. And we didn't start out to be in the conservation storytelling business. We didn't start out in the brand building space. We evolved into that because A, we were following our passions, but B, recognizing opportunity and acting on it and and growing it and realizing that the industry, the environment in the content space is changing all around us. And how do you be an industry leader in that and be on the forefront, be on that leading edge? And I feel like we have been.
Yeah. I think we've navigated that, and we've also got a little bit of luck along the way, right? And recognizing when you get lucky, and I think we've gotten lucky, but we've put ourselves in positions to get lucky. But I think
back to our histories, right? We've been good at that, both of us, on our individual journeys and then our collective journey to say we have a good work ethic, we've got some creativity, we've got some sort of intelligence, if you want to call it that. But recognizing when an opportunity is there, and that is lucky sometimes. When that opportunity, you don't know when those opportunities are going to present themselves. That's the lucky part. They are presented. Survivor, right? The television show, sort of being introduced to that in your field. Recognizing that opportunity and seizing it and saying, this was a lucky stroke for me. Talking to Diego, right? And recognizing that was a lucky opportunity, but seizing it. You make your luck, I think in that way. And you're smart enough to recognize that's there. Does it pan out every time? No, absolutely not.
It definitely doesn't. And that's what either makes or break you, right? Is what you do with that. I'm a big component of working hard to get what you want. And I can say this, you cannot be upset with the results of the work you didn't put in, period.
Right.
If you don't put the work in, how are you going to be upset with those results? You can't be. You didn't do the work. And I think for us, we put the work in and we've been grinding this entire time. It's been a pleasure on the journey. We've got so many things that we could talk about and continue to build on. BeAlive is going in places. Rivers are Life. We've got shows at the studio that are at networks right now. So we're going to have to come back. You're going to have to come back on. We're going to have to do updates of all the things that are happening. Very exciting. Hopefully we fill in the blank of that little company that we were going to put there so we can talk about that. And I really wanted to, with everybody that's listening, I know that a lot of you know me from certain things within the drop side and everything else, but I really wanted to set the tone with the business of BeAlive. And as we come back in full force with all this content, kind of getting an understanding of where we've been. I would say one of the biggest things for me in the past probably just 3 to 4 months has been, as you're doing things, you come to this split where you're doing it for certain reasons, and now you get to choose. And I think with you and everything we've done together at the business, it's been a great journey all along the way. But we knew how we did it. We knew what we did. I think the most exciting thing for me has been coming back to, why do we do it? I think you and I focus a little bit on that as of recently. Why are we doing this? And we've even had those conversations late into the hours because Zach's in Montana loving the mountain fresh air life, and I'm in the box in Midland, Michigan, and we're 2 hours behind. But those late conversations around all these things, we've really come back and said, why are we doing this? And I think we're aligned. This is why we're doing it. We're building, we're inspiring people to get out there and chase their passions. You've had an incredibly inspiring career, from Kenya to environmental studies to telling some of the most, again, prolific stories and shows on television today you've been a part of. And we're happy to have you here as the president of studios. I'm happy to have you as a business partner. I look forward to the future of what we're going to build, because I think we've just scratched the surface, and I'm super excited about it. So.
I couldn't agree more. The best is yet to come. And, I think together, we are charting a really successful path.
Yeah. It's exciting stuff. So that's an inside look of kind of behind the scenes with Zach, our president of studios, our chief content officer, and many, many other names, friend, colleague, type A personality, yeller as well as me, that we have all these great battles with. But that's an inside look. If you liked it, guys, let me know. Do a little comments. Send Zach, follow him on all the things that he's on, and follow Rivers Are Life, and watch some of the stories that the production team and the studios have put out. And I should mention this because this is another story, and we don't need to get into too much detail, but I do want to mention this. Zach met his wife on Survivor. We didn't touch on this. And KRG, affectionately KRG, Kate Richter Green,
yes.
Is also at the studios with you, but you met on Survivor.
You know, she hired me.
She hired you. That is KRG. I didn't know that, so we're gonna have to hold that over Zach's head. KRG is his wife. We met on Survivor. She's also at the studios, and we already gave a shout out to Pip and also Cliff at the studios for doing what they do on a daily basis. It's incredible. So, fun story. That next time, I want to hear exactly what happened and how they met. Hopefully, it was on a challenge as a dream team together. But we'll get into that story next time. Zach's going to be in and out throughout the entire time, helping me with this, and every time he comes in, you're going to see him because we got all these updates and lots to talk about. So, Zach, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. And if you're a brand out there and you want to tell your story, come on, let's do this. Rivers Are Life, BeAlive, let's make it happen. Other than that, like, share, do all the fun things, and most importantly, go BeAlive. Thanks, guys.
Now I'm on the run, got my life, got my gun, got my picture in the paper, public enemy #1. Pedal to the metal and freedom straight ahead. But this crazy cowboy shit's got a bounty on my head. Lord, if you're listening, please don't take me far away. The devil is singing and all this is what he's saying. The red sun is hiding, the desert moon is laughing. The hound dogs are howling, it's my last night in Texas, it's my last night in Texas. My last night in Texas.
All right, adventurers, whether you're camping, fishing, hunting, or just enjoying the great outdoors, you need to get that gear that can keep up. That's why we choose and trust Grizzly. It's built tough for every adventure with unmatched durability and performance. Their products are perfect for your next trip into the wild. Plus, they're made in the USA and they come with a lifetime warranty. So why would you settle for anything less? I got to tell you, I have been using Grizzly products for years. I have the original cooler, still ticking today, and they have just moved into the hunting blind market. And I got to tell you, that is the most fantastic hunting blind I have ever seen. I'm very excited to use that this fall. From drinkware to bags, you name it, Grizzly has it all. They're an amazing brand, and they support the outdoorsman. More importantly, they are built to last. So check out grizzlycoolers.com. That's grizzlycoolers.com's Forge Your Own Trail. If you're looking to elevate your outdoor adventures, you've got to check out Mountain Ops supplements. Whether you're hiking, hunting, or hitting the gym, Mountain Ops has you covered with top-notch performance-driven products. Their supplements are designed to enhance your endurance, strength, and recovery, keeping you at peak no matter the challenge. Personally, I've got to tell you that my favorite is Ignite. Every single morning I start out with Ignite. It's an energy, it's a focus. It's definitely my go-to. I also love their ammo protein for lunch, especially in the to-go packs. Guys, I've been with them literally since the beginning, and I got to tell you, I would not choose any other supplement. So why wait? Head on over to mountainops.com. That's MTNOPS.com, Mountain Ops, and use the code Keefer, Keefer, for 20% off your order. That's Mountain Ops. Conquer more. All right, let's talk about Bass Pro and Cabela's. Wherever your adventure takes you, count on Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's to make it memorable. I know I've been doing that for over 20 years as an incredible partner, Bass Pro and Cabela's, and not to mention a vacation destination. If you have never been to one of these Bass Pro and Cabela's, load up the family. Make it a trip. I'm telling you, between the aquariums and all the fun stuff they have there, not to mention the top gear on the planet, Bass Pro and Cabela's, get your family outfitted with the right gear with premium brands like Worldwide Sportsman, Ascend, Redhead, Natural Reflections. They got it all. They got all the apparel and gear to make it your best adventure ever. So stop by today to one of their kind shopping experience stores, or you can also shop online. I've done it a lot, more than I'd like to admit. BassPro.com and Cabela's.com. See for yourself at Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here.